MacKenzie, Forest Service pathologist, and he is here to give his presentation on oaks and drought.
This one, can you hear me in the back?
You've got to turn it on.
When in doubt, turn it on. Can you hear me in the back?
No.
I gotta swallow this dreaded thing. I presume that worked. Okay, this is not going to be death by PowerPoint. I won't be too long. I'm just going to talk briefly about the oaks, in particular the blue oaks that we see around here in the foothills, and mention briefly the gray pines, to cover some of the stuff that Beverly already covered. But I wanted to start with this shot. It's out on J39. It's showing oaks. But I want to make the point that not all oaks are created equally. See the ones up on the top there? High density. And you've got trees at high density, they suffer. When you've got trees scattered out in their own, a long way from everything else, they can survive the drought an awful lot better. You've heard this already. It's about thinning, and you can see what happens when the oaks are dense. See, they're nearly all blue oaks. I got called to some around Fresno a while back, and then we're going to take some photographs of these isolated trees because they are suffering, but they did not die. They are native. See, one of the things I keep telling people is that we have annual droughts in California. It's just that the natives call them summers. Because we have a Mediterranean climate and it doesn't rain too much in the summer. Now we're going to look at this particular oak and look at it a little more carefully, and we're going to look inside the drip line, inside that black line, to see what's going on. And when you look in the ground, inside it, there was lots of oak leaves on the ground, and they were recent fallen oak leaves. There was a large portion of the solar panels, because that's what leaves are. They're solar panels. They trap the energy. Here was this tree using these leaves as solar panels to trap energy, but it was running short of water, and it sacrificed its leaves, or some of them. And when you stood inside the crown and looked back out, you could see that there was a crown you could spit through. There was a lot of room for other solar panels, but these are solar panels that had been sacrificed. The trees make sound use of the limited water they have. Don't think they keep running flat out. When we go into a drought, they start sacrificing. They make decisions, and they start conserving the limited water they've got. When you were to look at the tips of those twigs, you would have found, where's my lightsaber? You would have found that the leaves were clustered right out on the tips. These are the freshest, the youngest, the most virulent leaves. Virulent's not the right word. But they were the most virile leaves. But further back on the bush, on the twig, the tree had already shed leaves. It had shed leaves to balance its solar panels with the available moisture. But it had not sacrificed its buds. The buds were still here because they are the future solar panels of the tree. This is a shot that Bev and I took a couple of years back of a close-up of this, but what I want you to see is down here in the draw where there is moisture. The willows are surviving, and this oak is quite healthy. When we first saw this, we were worried that we were going to lose a lot of trees. I'll turn the photograph a long way so you can see it in long shot. Down at the bottom where the water had run to, where the water had seeped to, the trees were healthy. Higher up on the slope, the trees had already shed their leaves. It was fall colors in the summer because the tree was balancing its crown to the available moisture. The blue oaks have been here for millennia. This drought's not going to knock them back. But they'll be kind of skinny for a while and they'll lose a lot of their leaves. Here's one, and shout it out. What's this one? because when I came to California, I had never seen this plant before. It's a real California native, I heard it. It's the buckeye. What does the buckeye do? It sheds a whole blinking lot of them. What it does is it says, to hell with this, I'm avoiding the drought. And the way it avoids the drought, or the annual summer, is to shed all of its leaves. And this was a typical summer shot 4 or 5 years ago. Here's another one up around Plymouth. The oaks in the foreground may have lost a few leaves. The buckeye said, to hell with it, I'm ducking my head out of this one, and I'm avoiding the water stress. But maybe, oh, I won't go back. In that previous shot on the hillside, there were crowns of the gray pine, the bull pine, the foothill pine. And in this photograph, which is just the back of, oh, I remember where I got this one. It's local. They should have looked at too. See these bright green fellows? These are the buckeyes early in the summer. They're growing gangbusters. They sit there, and as soon as they can get off the ground, they get going, because they've got a short season. They're going to drop their leaves very quickly. And the gray pines are very gray, and some of them are dead. There's a house down here, and this is around Coulterville, back at Coulterville. And these are exotic pines, or off-site pines, but presumably are being irrigated around the house and surviving. What is the problem in this scene?
Overcrowding.
Thank you. What does this need? Oh, a damn good fire. Not all fires are bad, and not all fires are good. It needs thinning because there's not enough water to keep the grays alive. Our grays are on a knife edge, a sharp water knife edge wedged between the pondos on the higher slope and the blue oaks lower down. And it doesn't take much to push them over the edge. Bev and I have been watching gray pines winking out, 1 or 2 here or there over many years. And of course now they're going out in larger numbers. Take a look back in Main Street. This is Maloney's from the bathroom, long before the bathtub drained down. You can see the scum lying around the bathtub. But up on the slope, scattered grays surviving the drought. They're native, they're adapted to it. But why are they surviving? Thank you. They're spread out. They are just making use of every available piece of moisture. In the last couple of days, Bev's been up flying, and I haven't seen all her photographs yet, but she has reported significant numbers of them dying because this drought is worse than your average Californian summer. Everybody know what this plant is? It's a plant. Okay, so we're looking at a big needle fellow. This is a gray. This is the dwarf mistletoe. And dwarf mistletoes are water parasites. They get all of their water, not from the ground, but right out of the xylem of the gray pine. They get their water right out of the gray pine. They are parasites. And this, even though this is last year's photograph, during the drought, what do you notice about the needles? They're sparse. They're also fairly long. And I'm going to show you something in a minute. Because this is a water parasite, and it doesn't want to conserve water. It doesn't care about conserving water. All it cares about is surviving. And it tells the stomates of the gray pine to stay open and keep transpiring water. What happens, I'll explain how it does it first. It's got its roots, and they are roots, buried in the xylem of the gray pine. They're like a well sucking out of the aquifer, and the aquifer in this verse is the gray pine. And it's keeping the water pumps on, putting incredible stress on the gray pine. Because normally, the gray pine would be a reasonable citizen of our forests, and it would shut down its water consumption. But it gets overridden because the gray pine is sending a chemical signal via its root exudates, via its hormones, to tell this gray pine, there is no drought, there's plenty of water, keep pumping it, keep pumping it. But it's stressing the gray. This is one of those trees. It had big mistletoes back here. And you see the little arrow for the 2014 needles? Here they are right at the tip. And behind them is a cluster of what? No, they're not mistletoes. They're part of the trees. They're pollen cones. And what happens to the pollen cones? They rupture and they spread out all this pollen. And then they what? They fall off. So these are the 2014 needles, the 2014 pollen cones, the 2013 needles. The 2013 pollen cones would once have been here. We go back another year, we've got the needles of 2012. A bald spot where the pollen cones once were. And this tree is carrying 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of live solar panels. And then 2 sets of dead solar panels. And for those who are up with it, the distance from there to there is how far the tree grew that year. That's how far it grew the next year. It grew the next year. Grew the next year. This tree was infected with a mistletoe. This branch was being told, there is no drought. You don't have to conserve water. Keep mistletoe, I need the water. What would a gray pine do if it didn't have a mistletoe? This is what it would do. I pulled the needles off this gray pine. Here's the 2014 solar panels, the 13 solar panels, the 12 solar panels, the 11 solar panels. What's going on here? 3 years of drought. What did the tree do? It cut back its water consumption. And in the spring, when it was expanding its needles, there wasn't enough water for it to do that. So it started what we all have to do. After we heard Governor Brown tell us, cut 25%. Well, personally, my wife and I are not sure how we're going to do it. But we will do it. So what has happened is the reasonable citizens of our forests, the gray pine, the one that's been here for years, accommodates the drought by shortening the amount of needles it's got, having thin crowns, growing much, much slower to conserve water. The California buckeye, native, been here forever. It just says, to hell with it, I'm out of here, and avoids the drought. The blue oaks, they drop their leaves, but they keep their buds so that they can sprout and come back after the rain. You'll notice I haven't mentioned the ponderosa because the ponderosa has a problem that the gray doesn't have, that the buckeye doesn't have, and the blue oak doesn't have. It's got bark beetles. And that's what the difference is. These other species are accommodating very well and will live through this summer. Although it's a summer like none of us have seen before. And I just wanted to, Bev and company allowed me to, this small talk, to tell you that it's not all totally bad. The natives that have been here the longest, the natives that are most adapted to our conditions will survive. there'll be a lot fewer pines. But the ones that are left will be further apart. And what happens to trees when they're further apart? There's a lot more moisture for them individually. And if we have a whole series of wet years, we'll get greedy again and we'll allow the trees to thicken up and we'll be back where we started. But part of the problem was created by the organization I work for. It was Smokey's Helpers. We fought too many fires. And now we have a problem of over-dense forests. We don't have over-dense forests in the foothills where the oaks are because they space themselves out. They have to if they want to survive. And that's where I wanted to stop. And I think we're going to have some more questions. Or see, here's the boss coming now. Thank you.